All right, and so in this lesson, we're going to go over greenwashing. Basically, what is it, how does it impact sustainability, and how can we avoid it, and also go over a few examples of it. Okay, so first of all, greenwashing. There's again, just like everything else, it seems like there's not one single definition of greenwashing. So here's a few ways that it can be defined. The use of marketing to portray an organization's products, activities, or policies as environmentally friendly when they're not. Um, so it can be um, straight up people are, or companies are trying to portray their products as sustainable, but they're really not. So it's kind of lying, basically. And just so you know, the term greenwashing is a play on the term whitewashing. So if you whitewash something, it's like you wash over it and you try to hide something. Um, Another way to think about it is a superficial or insincere display of concern for the environment that is shown by an organization. That's kind of like when you oversell the environmental aspects of something that you're doing or selling. Like you make it look like it's really sustainable when really it's not nearly as much as it is. And so another way to think about it is when a company or organization spends more time and money claiming to be green through advertising and marketing than actually implementing business practices that minimize their impact. So again, this is, the bottom line here is it's when a company really just tries to sell you on the belief that they're doing something sustainable when either they're not doing something sustainable or it's not nearly as sustainable as you think it is, or maybe it is sustainable, but it's a very small part of what they do. So let's just go over one example here. I want you to think about whether or not this is greenwashing. So this is actually a picture from a hotel room, and for those of you that have stayed in a hotel in the last like 10, 15 years, this may look familiar, right? So in case you can't read it, it says in really big letters at the top, it says "Save Our Planet." Here it says, "Dear guest, every day millions of gallons of water are used to wash towels that have only been used once. You make the choice. A towel on the rack means I will use again. A towel on the floor means please replace. Thank you for helping us conserve the Earth's vital resources." So the question is this greenwashing? So I want you to go ahead and press pause and think about it. And so I think there's a few things to think about here. One, so they say every day millions of gallons of water are used to wash towels that have already been used. So that's true. And I don't want to diminish the fact that this hotel is trying to minimize their water use. And so, maybe they're overselling a little here. Are millions of gallons of water used to wash your towel? No, they're not saying that, but by sort of saying, by saying that millions of gallons or using that phrase millions of gallons, kind of puts it in your head like, oh yeah, I can save millions of gallons of water. To me, the really big one here is that it says save our planet real big. Again, I don't want to diminish what they're doing. It's better than them not trying to get you to not wash your towels. But it's not saving the planet, sorry. I mean, so that to me really kind of puts it over the top in terms of greenwashing. If they were just a little more honest about it, they could indicate every day millions of gallons are used to wash towels. Here's how you can help us save some water. And this even down here is fine. Thank you for helping us conserve the Earth's vital resources. That's fine. It just kind of oversells it when you say save our planet. Now maybe they're trying to get people to sort of shock people into doing something about it, and that's fine if that's like a way to convince people to do it. But in my opinion, this save our planet part puts it a little over the top in terms of, it's a little, they're overselling what, their environmental credentials are. And it's also important to think about, and if you ever see this in a hotel, I want you to think about, are they turning off lights overnight? Do they leave if there's a refrigerator in there, do they leave refrigerators on? Things like, do they have a heated pool? Do they do a lot of other things to promote sustainability? Maybe they locate themselves in an area that has public transportation access. Do they use organic food? Do they compost their waste? Do they recycle everything? So it's important to look at everything as a whole. And I don't mean to be too critical here, but it is important to really think through when you see things like this. Is it really a sincere display? Are they really doing everything that they can to promote sustainability, or is it just kind of something they put that very prominently to sort of help convince you, or they want you to think that they're being sustainable? Okay, so this is a little bit of a gray area. And overall, it is better than nothing, and there's no denying that, but I think they oversell their sustainability credentials a little bit. Okay, so let's go over a little bit of greenwashing, some examples here. And the first thing we're going to do is look at an advertisement from BP. Okay, let's look at it here.
Make the day a little better. Make the way a little better. Say hey, a little better. It's the place where I want to be. Say hey. Make the day a little better. Say hey.
Okay, so that was an advertisement for BP, which has rebranded themselves to Beyond Petroleum. So it's an oil company. So let's look at an alternative perspective of that commercial here.
Say hey, make the day a little better.
All right, so we can stop it there. The commercial uses a lot of techniques that you see that are pretty common with advertising in general. Let's look at it. So just the fact that, let's look here. For starters, it uses a bunch of kids, right? Really common. You want to sell your product and seem very non-threatening and likable. Use kids. They use this catchy song. There's a lot of sort of green imagery here, right? So you have like there's green hues everywhere. The gas, again, they're not claiming that their gasoline is green, but they are implying, they're using all these green tones to on the gas pump. You go here, you got wind turbines in the background. Again, you got the kids, you got the sunshine. Everything looks really happy and sort of healthy and green. I mean, look how many, you could probably count like 6 shades of green just in this one image. And that's done very deliberately. They know that the shade of green or the color green is indicates sustainability, or it's known to indicate sustainability. Okay, and so let me get back here. And they use kids, they use all these sort of rhetorical strategies to help convince you that they're green. And just one thing that they mentioned in that video is that that they did rebrand themselves. So BP actually used to stand for British Petroleum, okay? And they actually rebranded themselves to Beyond Petroleum. They changed their logo to something a little more like a green sunshine, basically. So that, again, they're still an oil company. They still are promoting the use of fossil fuels. They're still really the cause of a lot of carbon emissions and a lot of other environmental problems, okay? And to their credit, they were one of the oil companies that supported put more funding toward renewable energy than a lot of the others. But again, it was a very minimal part. So whether or not that was a sincere attempt to promote renewable energy or not, they spent more time to sort of advertising the fact that they were doing that than they actually, effort they put toward promoting renewable energy. So a lot of greenwashing is going on both in that commercial, but in general with BP. Okay, so let's look back at this clean coal commercial that you saw at the beginning here. Let's go back to that here. All right. So I want you to think about not just, excuse me, whether or not there is such a thing as clean coal, but also, again, I want you to take a really good hard look at the imagery they use, the subtle messages they send through this advertisement.
I believe in the future.
In the future.
I believe in protecting the environment.
I believe in energy independence.
I believe we can limit greenhouse gases and keep energy cost affordable.
I believe in technology.
I believe in American ingenuity.
I believe that meeting a challenge
Brings out the best in us.
We will do this.
I believe. I believe.
I believe.
We can be energy independent. We can continue to use our most abundant fuel cleanly and responsibly. We can, we will. Clean coal, America's power.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite commercials for this purpose, in terms of the imagery that advertisers use, that companies use to sort of sell you these subliminal messages. So let's go back through this quickly. All right, so very first, we're starting off with this older woman sitting by this nice bucolic, relaxing setting. We got trees in the background. I mean, these, of course, images are very specifically designed. The pose, I mean, the outfit, neutral colors, everything. She looks like she's relaxing. And so they start off at the outset with these symbols, right? So let's keep going here.
I believe in the future.
In the future.
We start off with the older woman, very non-threatening. She believes this nice outdoor setting, and now we have another sort of box to check, right? So now we have a student. Not only is he a student, but he is kind of vaguely ethnic in some way, probably Hispanic, but we're not really sure. So again, they're not saying that all Hispanic students or all Hispanics or all students support clean coal, but that's the message that they're trying to send you subliminally.
I believe in
So again, another really good one. Perfectly framed and posed. We got the old school windmill in the background, the American farmer, right? So salt of the earth type, the very perfectly typecast for this rural farmer.
protecting the environment.
And he says protecting the environment.
I believe in energy independence.
So we have the older woman, we have the student, we have the farmer, we have another vaguely ethnic, now we have a teacher in this case, right?
I believe we can limit greenhouse gases and keep energy cost affordable.
Another, so again, now we have a female doctor of some kind, or excuse me, a researcher. So, right, you got the white lab coat, you got these, some sort of experimental equipment in the background. We got, I'm sure these are just, we got this yellow and orange dyed liquid of some kind, there's a microscope. So all these things, again, very carefully laid out and very perfectly framed. We have, the female, we have the male teacher, we have a student, we have a farmer. So let's keep going here.
I believe in technology.
Again, we have a nurse, a black nurse. Now we checked a couple more boxes there, healthcare, another.
I believe in American ingenuity.
So now we have the industrial worker, right? So the blue collar, we're in manufacturing. All right.
I believe that meeting a challenge
brings out the best in us.
We will do this.
I believe. I believe.
I believe.
We can be energy independent. We can continue to use our most abundant fuel cleanly and responsibly. We can.
And so we kind of finish off with this image. Somehow they're all magically together, wearing the same outfits, right? So this just checks a lot of those boxes. And again, they're not trying to tell you that all people, all teachers, all nurses, all farmers, and so forth believe in this, but that's the subliminal message that they're sending you. It's very deliberate, very well designed, and they also use, they keep repeating the phrases, I believe in American ingenuity. So this, trying to appeal to patriotism. I believe in environmental, that we can save the environment and so forth. So this is a really good example of really packing in a lot of these messages into a single advertisement without actually portraying that message specifically.
We will. Clean coal, America's power.
Okay, and then even the term clean coal was specifically designed to help, or to sort of try to make you associate clean with coal, right? Even though there's really no such thing as clean coal, that what clean coal does is it actually just reduces your CO2 emissions. And so if you look at clean coal, the problem here is that aside from all of this stuff that they're trying to sell you with the imagery, there really is no such thing as clean coal. It is clean coal just seriously reduces the amount of CO2 emissions that come from coal, but there's still other emissions, the nitrous oxides, the sulfur dioxides, and so forth, and then there's the other environmental issues with mining waste and so forth. So there's a lot of greenwashing going on with the clean coal, sort of from top to bottom. Even the name itself is. Okay, so here's one last advertisement. I'll show you this one here.
As global warming becomes more of a concern, all of us in the petroleum industry are doing what we can to show that we care about the environment. Many of us have changed our logos from something like this to this. See, it looks like a flower.
And we in the plastics industry are doing our part by putting the word recyclable on all of our products. Where to recycle, how to recycle, or what to recycle it into haven't been thought of yet. But we're spending millions researching where on our product the recycle logo is the most visible.
And I'm wearing a sweater instead of a suit, so I must love nature. And look where I'm standing. Isn't it beautiful? Now when you think of oil refineries, hopefully you'll think of this.
We're doing our part to look environmental, but we need you to meet us halfway and believe we're environmental, even when we lobby against pollution restrictions like the Kyoto Accord.
So when you hear about an oil spill that's killing thousands of birds, or an oil spill that's destroying marine life, or any oil-related disaster, think of deer playing in a field in slow motion.
Look, dolphins! The more you think about these things, the less you're thinking about the island of plastic garbage in the middle of the Pacific that's twice the size of Texas.
Because a clean ocean is a great photo opportunity.
For the children.
This message from the Canadian Resource Association of Petroleum and Plastic Producers. You can't spell greenwashing without green.
Okay, so obviously that was satire, but it does, I think, make a lot of good points about the imagery that advertisers use in their commercials. You have the guy or the girl wearing not wearing a suit and tie. They're out in nature. They show deer prancing through the forest or whatever. So they do want you to think of these images when you think of their company. That's a very deliberate strategy, and it does work. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend millions of dollars doing it. Okay, and so that's sort of a funny way to look at greenwashing. But some ways to spot greenwashing, and this is partially from your reading. So you look at the company as a whole, right? So if they make a claim, does if you look at a BP that says they're promoting sustainable energy, look at what the company is doing as a whole. Excuse me. There's so much information available. You can do a lot of research on this. So in that vein, you can look at Google the company. So again, if we're using BP as an example, Google BP in the environment and see what comes up. Google BP in sustainability, or even BP in greenwashing. And just as a general sense, does it kind of feel right? So like if you have an oil company that's claiming to be sustainable, does that just not quite feel right to you? Does it not seem like it has to, like it's the whole story? So some of this sort of involves intuition, but really the most important thing, the best thing you can do is educate yourself about what's sustainable and not. So taking this class is a good example, or even watching this video if you're not taking the class. The best thing you can do is just learn as much as you possibly can about sustainability, and then you have a much better basis to judge whether or not something is greenwashing. And also it's important, greenwashing is a really big problem for a number of reasons. A really big one is if people support a company or buy a product because they think that they're being sustainable, but really they're not, then when people are actually trying to do things to promote sustainability, they're actually they're not supporting it, or they're actually making it worse. So that's a really big problem. It also just sort of confuses the issue. So if an oil company claims to be sustainable, and you have people sort of believing, wow, maybe an oil company can be sustainable, when really they can't. Again, to be fair to BP, they did do some things to promote sustainability, but if you have people that don't know better and they think, wow, yeah, so good, this oil company's sustainable, so we can buy all the oil we want, we can support everything they're doing, and that confuses this issue and makes it a little harder to understand what truly is sustainable and is not. And we could go over a few examples, but I'm just going to go over one more here. You'll see these electric cars, so sometimes they'll state that they're zero emissions vehicles. So what's really important to know about this is that the vehicles themselves don't actually emit any emissions. That's true. So nothing comes out of the tailpipe. There's no CO2. There's no nitrous oxide. There's no particulates. Nothing is actually, the car itself doesn't emit anything. But a really big problem here, and this kind of harkens back to what we discussed with the energy and climate change part, is that most of the electricity in the US and globally comes from burning fossil fuels. So by virtue of using the electricity to drive this electric car, yes, there are no emissions emitted by the car, but there are emissions that result because of the way the electricity was produced. Okay, so that's a really important part of it. And also, for what it's worth, it's also most of these cars use lithium-ion batteries, which have some environmental implications, and they're all the materials for the car. So again, to be fair, overall the emissions are reduced with electric vehicles. There are some issues with batteries and materials that are used. It's probably better than using gasoline engines, but there are better alternatives, like taking public transportation, using bicycles, walking, and so forth. So it's, I don't want to be too critical of electric vehicles, because if we could actually get all of our electricity from renewable and cleaner sources, then these would be a lot more sustainable, and they would truly be almost a zero emission vehicle. But the way that the infrastructure, electricity infrastructure is currently both in the U.S. and worldwide, it's it does, stating that this is a zero emission vehicle does stretch the truth enough that it is greenwashing.